My name is Bernadette. I am 67 years old, and I am standing beside my son's casket, feeling like the entire world has just crumbled beneath my feet. Marcus was only 42. He had his whole life ahead of him. A car accident on the highway took him from me 10 days ago, and I still cannot believe he is gone. My daughter-in-law Priscilla stands next to me holding my hand. I think she is comforting me. But I do not know that in just a few minutes I will hear something that will shatter my heart for the second time in the same day. Before I share this story with you, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever trusted someone who turned out to be completely different from who you thought they were, this story is for you. Please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because what Priscilla did not know is that my son had changed his will just 2 weeks before he died. Let me take you back to the beginning because you need to understand how we got here. You need to know who Marcus was, who I am, and how Priscilla came into our lives. I became a widow 15 years ago when my husband Harold passed away from a heart attack. He was only 58 years old. One morning, he was drinking his coffee and reading the newspaper at our kitchen table, and by that afternoon, he was gone. The doctors said his heart just gave out. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. Marcus was 27 at the time, already a grown man, but losing his father hit him hard. We leaned on each other through that grief, and our bond grew even stronger. For 35 years, I worked as a nurse at the local hospital here in Pennsylvania. I retired just 2 years ago. The work was hard, the hours were long, but I loved every minute of it. Taking care of people gave my life meaning. After Harold died, I threw myself into my job even more. It helped me cope. It gave me purpose. And knowing that Marcus was doing well building his career as a software engineer in Philadelphia made me proud. He was my only child, my greatest accomplishment. Our little house in the suburbs held so many memories. The backyard where Marcus learned to ride his bike, the kitchen where I taught him how to make his grandmother's apple pie, the front porch where Harold used to sit with his guitar on summer evenings. I kept everything the same after Harold passed. I could not bear to change it, and Marcus understood. He would come home on weekends sometimes, and we would sit on that old porch swing together talking about everything and nothing. I lived simply. I did not need much. My pension was enough, and I had saved money over the years, hoping to leave something for Marcus when my time came. I never imagined that he would leave this world before me. No parent should ever have to bury their child. Then Priscilla came along. Marcus met her at a company party about 8 years ago. He called me the next day, his voice full of excitement. "Mom," he said, "I met someone incredible. Her name is Priscilla. She works in real estate. She is smart and beautiful and funny. I cannot stop thinking about her." I was happy for him. At 34, Marcus had dated a few women over the years, but nothing serious had ever developed. I was beginning to wonder if he would ever find someone to share his life with. So when he told me about Priscilla, my heart filled with hope. 3 months later, he brought her home to meet me. Priscilla was 35 at the time. She had dark hair, styled perfectly expensive clothes, and a confident way of carrying herself. She brought flowers and a bottle of wine. She complimented my home, said it had character, said she could tell it was filled with love. She smiled at all the right moments, laughed at Marcus's jokes, and called me Mrs. Thompson until I insisted she call me Bernadette. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. Marcus looked at her like she hung the moon, and I wanted to like her. I really did. But there was something I could not quite put my finger on. A certain coolness behind her eyes when she thought no one was watching. A slight tension in her smile that did not quite match her words. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that no one would ever be good enough for my son in my eyes. I pushed those feelings aside. The wedding came a year later. Priscilla wanted a big celebration, a fancy venue, an expensive caterer, designer, everything. Marcus had always been more of a simple guy, but he wanted to make her happy. I understood that. When you love someone, you make sacrifices. So I did not say anything when the wedding plans grew bigger and bigger. I contributed $20,000 to the wedding. It was a significant portion of my savings, but Marcus was my only child and I wanted his day to be special. I gave the check to Priscilla directly since she was handling all the arrangements. She took it with a quick thank you, slipped it into her purse, and went back to discussing flower arrangements with the planner. No hug, no real acknowledgement. Just that brief thank you, and she moved on. On the wedding day, I arrived at the venue early wearing the dress I had spent weeks searching for. I wanted to look nice for my son. I wanted him to be proud of me. But when I found my seat, my heart sank a little. I was at a table near the back corner of the room, far from the main table, where Marcus and Priscilla sat with her family. I tried to catch Marcus's eye during the reception. When I finally did, he looked confused. He came over during a break in the dancing. "Mom, why are you sitting all the way back here?" he asked. I shrugged and smiled. I did not want to cause any problems. "It is fine, sweetheart. The wedding planner probably just made a mistake." Marcus frowned. "I will talk to Priscilla." No, I said, grabbing his hand. "Do not worry about it. This is your day. Go enjoy it." He kissed my forehead and went back to his bride. But I saw the look on his face. He knew something was not right. Later that evening, I overheard Priscilla talking to one of her bridesmaids near the bathroom. I was not eavesdropping. I was just walking by. But her words stopped me cold. "His mother is sweet, I guess," Priscilla said. "But honestly, there is nothing impressive about that side of the family. No money, no connections, just a little house in the suburbs and a retired nurse who thinks she is more important than she is." The bridesmaid giggled. "At least Marcus makes good money." "That is the only reason I am here," honey, Priscilla replied. I stood frozen in the hallway. My hands trembled. My eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. But I did not confront her. It was my son's wedding day. I would not ruin it. So I swallowed my pain, fixed my smile, and went back to my table in the corner. I never told Marcus what I heard that night. I thought maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe she was joking. Maybe I was being too sensitive. I made excuses for her because I wanted my son to be happy, and he seemed happy. So I kept quiet. That was my first mistake. After the wedding, Marcus and Priscilla bought a house in a fancier suburb about 45 minutes from mine. It was a beautiful home. 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, a modern kitchen with granite countertops. Priscilla decorated it like something out of a magazine. Everything was white and gray and perfectly staged. It did not feel like a home to me. It felt like a showroom. But I kept that opinion to myself. I tried to visit once a month. I would drive over on a Saturday afternoon bringing containers of food I had cooked. Pot roast, chicken soup, lasagna. The recipes Harold used to love the ones Marcus grew up eating. I thought it would be a nice gesture, a way to stay connected, a reminder of home. But Priscilla never ate what I brought. The first time she said she was on a diet. The second time she claimed she had just eaten lunch. The third time, she wrinkled her nose slightly and said, "Oh, I am not really a pot roast person." But thank you, Bernadette. The containers would sit in the refrigerator untouched until my next visit, when I would quietly take them home and throw them away. Marcus would eat some when Priscilla was not around. He told me once in a low voice that my cooking reminded him of being a kid again. That admission made me happy and sad at the same time. What I noticed most was that Priscilla never invited me to stay overnight. There were 4 bedrooms in that house. One was theirs. One was Priscilla's home office. One was a guest room that she said was for her mother when she visited. The 4th was a storage room. There was no space for me, she implied, without ever saying it directly. So I would make the 45-minute drive home every time, even when it was late, even when I was tired. Marcus called me every Sunday evening. It became our routine. He would ask how I was doing, tell me about his work share, little stories about his week. But as the months passed, I noticed the calls getting shorter. 5 minutes instead of 20. Quick updates instead of real conversations. And when I asked about Priscilla, his answers became vague. "She is fine. She is busy with work. You know how it is." I wanted to ask more, but I did not want to pry. Marcus was a grown man. He had his own life. I had to respect that. Then came the Thanksgiving that changed everything. It was the second year of their marriage. Priscilla invited me over for Thanksgiving dinner. I was thrilled. Finally, I thought she is making an effort. Maybe things will get better. I spent 2 days making my mother's pumpkin pie. It was a family recipe passed down through 3 generations. The crust made from scratch. The filling spiced with cinnamon, nutmeg, and a secret touch of ginger. This pie was tradition. It was history. It was love in a baking dish. I arrived at their house with the pie carried carefully in my arms. Priscilla opened the door, looked at the pie, and said, "Oh, we already ordered dessert from the bakery. But that is sweet of you, Bernadette. You can leave it in the kitchen." I set the pie on the counter where it sat untouched for the entire evening. Dinner was awkward. Priscilla's parents were there along with her sister and brother-in-law. They talked among themselves, sharing inside jokes and family stories that I was not part of. Priscilla barely addressed me directly. When I tried to contribute to the conversation, she would nod politely and then change the subject. At one point, Priscilla got up to video call some friends who could not make it. She spent 20 minutes laughing and chatting with her phone propped up on the counter while I sat at the table feeling invisible. Marcus noticed. I saw him watching his wife, a crease forming between his eyebrows. Under the table, he reached over and squeezed my hand. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I will talk to her later." I shook my head. "Do not start a fight on a holiday, sweetheart. I am fine." But I was not fine. After dinner, I helped clean up the kitchen while everyone else moved to the living room. My pumpkin pie was still sitting on the counter untouched. No one had even asked about it. I quietly packed it back into its container and put it in my bag. On the drive home, I had to pull over because I was crying too hard to see the road. I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot for 20 minutes sobbing into my hands. I felt so small, so unwanted, so disposable. That was when I started to wonder if something was seriously wrong in Marcus's marriage. The years went by and the distance between us grew. I saw Marcus maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Priscilla always had a reason why more visits would not work. They were traveling. They had social obligations. She was showing houses to important clients. There was always something. But sometimes Marcus would show up at my door alone. He would call ahead, making sure I was home, and then drive the 45 minutes just to sit with me on the porch. He would bring flowers, tulips usually because he knew they were my favorite. We would drink iced tea in the summer or hot cocoa in the winter, and we would talk like we used to. During those visits, I could see how tired he looked. His eyes had lost some of their sparkle. He had lost weight and not in a healthy way. When I asked if everything was okay, he would give me a sad smile and say, "I am managing, Mom. Do not worry about me." But I did worry. How could I not? He was my son. Once, about 3 years into the marriage, Marcus let something slip. We were sitting on the porch swing watching the sunset when he said, "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice." I turned to look at him. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" He shook his head quickly. "Nothing. Forget I said anything." But I could not forget. The look in his eyes haunted me for weeks afterward. 2 weeks before the accident, Marcus called me on a Wednesday evening. His voice sounded different, heavier, more serious than usual. "Mom," he said, "can I come see you this Saturday? Just me. I need to talk to you about something important." "Of course," I replied. "Is everything all right?" He paused for a long moment. "I will explain when I see you." That Saturday, he arrived around 2 in the afternoon. He was carrying a bouquet of yellow tulips, my favorites, just like always. But his face was pale, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he had not slept in days. We sat on the back porch on the old wooden swing that Harold had built 30 years ago. The weather was mild for October, and the leaves were just starting to turn gold and red. I remember thinking how peaceful it all seemed, even though I could feel the tension radiating from my son. For a while, we did not talk. We just sat there swinging gently, listening to the birds. Then Marcus let out a long breath and started to speak. "Mom," he said, "I need to tell you the truth about my marriage." My heart clenched. I had suspected for years that something was wrong, but hearing him say it out loud made it real. He told me everything. Priscilla had changed after the wedding, he said. Or maybe she had always been that way and just hid it well during the dating phase. She was obsessed with money status and appearances. Everything had to look perfect from the outside. The right house, the right car, the right social circle. But inside, there was nothing real. She does not love me? Marcus said, his voice cracking. I do not think she ever did. She loved what I could provide. The salary, the lifestyle, the image of a successful husband. I reached over and took his hand. I did not interrupt. I just let him talk. He told me about the fights, the way Priscilla would belittle him when they were alone, the way she controlled every aspect of their home life, the way she spent money recklessly on things they did not need while complaining that they never had enough. And then he told me about what she said about me. Mom, Marcus said, looking me in the eyes, Priscilla has told me multiple times that you are a burden. She said that when you get older and need help, she refuses to take care of you. She said I should put you in a nursing home and forget about you. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I knew Priscilla did not like me. I had sensed it for years. But hearing my son confirm it, hearing the actual words she had used was devastating. Marcus continued, She has thrown away presents you gave us. The Christmas sweater you knitted last year, the photo album you made for our anniversary. She put them in the trash and did not even tell me. I found out by accident. I could not speak. Tears were streaming down my face. Marcus squeezed my hand. Mom, I am so sorry. I should have stood up to her a long time ago. I should have protected you. I was weak. No, I finally managed to say. You were trying to save your marriage. I understand. He shook his head. There is nothing left to save. I have been miserable for years, and last week I finally did something about it. I looked at him confused. What do you mean? Marcus took a deep breath. I went to see a lawyer. I changed my will. He explained the details. Originally, his will left everything to Priscilla as his spouse. That was standard, expected. But he had gone to his attorney and made significant changes. Now the majority of his financial assets, including his savings, his stock portfolio, and his life insurance policy, would go to me. Priscilla would still get her legal share of the house since they owned it jointly, and she would receive 30% of the remaining assets. But the bulk of everything, including a $500,000 life insurance policy he had recently purchased, was now designated for me. I do not want her to have it all, Marcus said. She does not deserve it, and I want to make sure you are taken care of no matter what happens. I started to protest. Marcus, I do not need your money. I am fine. I have my pension. He held up his hand. Mom, this is not about what you need. This is about what is right. Priscilla has treated you terribly. She has treated me terribly, and I will not let her walk away with everything while you struggle. I asked him if he was planning to divorce her. He was quiet for a moment. I do not know yet, he admitted. Part of me wants to try counseling, see if there is any way to fix things. But honestly, Mom, I do not think there is anything left to fix. I think I have been lying to myself for years. We sat together until the sun went down that evening. I made him dinner. We looked at old photo albums and laughed at pictures of him as a toddler. For a few hours, it felt like old times, like nothing bad had ever happened. When he left, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. I love you, Mom, he said. No matter what happens, remember that. I love you too, sweetheart, I replied. Drive safe. He walked to his car, turned around to wave at me one last time, and drove away. That was the last time I saw my son alive. 10 days later, my phone rang at 11:00 at night. I had been asleep. The ringing startled me so badly that I nearly knocked the phone off my nightstand. When I finally grabbed it, I saw an unfamiliar number on the screen. My first thought was that it was a wrong number or some kind of scam call. Nobody calls at 11 at night with good news. I answered anyway. Is this Mrs. Bernadette Thompson? A male voice asked. Yes, I said. Who is this, ma'am? This is Officer Reynolds from the Pennsylvania State Police. I am very sorry to inform you that your son, Marcus Thompson, was involved in a motor vehicle accident this evening on Interstate 76. My heart stopped. My whole body went cold. Is he okay? I heard myself asking. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. There was a pause that told me everything before the officer even spoke again. Ma'am, I am so sorry. Your son was transported to Jefferson Memorial Hospital, but he did not survive his injuries. He was pronounced dead at 9:47 this evening. The phone slipped from my hand. I heard myself screaming, but it sounded far away, like it was coming from another room. The next thing I remember, I was on the floor sobbing so hard I could not breathe. My neighbor Gloria found me an hour later. She had heard the screaming through the walls. She let herself in with the spare key I had given her and found me curled up on the bedroom floor, still clutching the phone. She helped me up, held me while I cried, and then drove me to the hospital. The drive was a blur. I remember the streetlights passing by. I remember Gloria's hand on mine. I remember praying that it was all a mistake, that they had gotten the wrong person, that Marcus was fine, and this was just a terrible nightmare. But it was not a nightmare. At the hospital, they took me to a small room with dim lighting and soft chairs. A doctor explained what had happened. Marcus had been driving home from a work event. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and crossed into Marcus's lane. The impact was devastating. Marcus died on the way to the hospital. They did everything they could, but his injuries were too severe. They asked if I wanted to see him. I said yes. Walking into that room was the hardest thing I have ever done. My son lay on a hospital bed, covered with a white sheet up to his chest. His face was peaceful, almost like he was sleeping. I took his hand. It was still warm. "I love you," I whispered. "I am so sorry I could not protect you." I stayed with him for over an hour. I told him about the first time I held him as a baby, about teaching him to ride a bike, about the day he graduated from college and how proud Harold would have been. I told him all the things I never got to say. Eventually, a nurse gently touched my shoulder and said I needed to go. Gloria was waiting outside. She drove me home, made me tea, and sat with me until the sun came up. Priscilla did not arrive at the hospital until 2 hours after I did. When she finally showed up, she was wearing a designer coat and full makeup. She walked into the room where I was sitting, looked at me briefly, and then started talking to the doctors about arrangements. She did not hug me. She did not cry. Her eyes were dry. Later, I realized she had probably been out somewhere when she got the news, at a dinner party maybe, or a work event. She did not rush to the hospital because she was not heartbroken. She was calculating. Over the next few days, Priscilla took complete control of the funeral arrangements. She did not ask my opinion on anything. When I suggested having the service at the little church where Marcus was baptized, she waved her hand dismissively. "That place is too small," she said. "Marcus deserves something more prestigious." She chose an expensive funeral home in the city. She invited all her business contacts and social acquaintances. She selected a photograph of Marcus in an expensive suit for the memorial display, ignoring the picture I had offered, a candid shot of him laughing at a family barbecue. I wanted to fight her. I wanted to scream that this was my son, not a prop for her social performance. But I did not have the energy. Grief had hollowed me out. I could barely get through each day. On the morning of the funeral, I put on a simple black dress that I had worn to Harold's memorial years ago. It was not fancy, but it was dignified. When I arrived at the funeral home, I saw Priscilla standing near the entrance, greeting guests like she was hosting a cocktail party. She wore an expensive black designer dress, high heels, and tasteful jewelry. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair was styled. She looked like she was going to a business luncheon, not burying her husband. The service itself was elegant but cold. Priscilla gave a eulogy about their love, their plans for the future, their wonderful partnership. It all sounded rehearsed. It all sounded hollow. I sat in the front row, clutching a handkerchief, trying not to fall apart. After the service, there was a reception in the funeral home's gathering room. People mingled, eating canapes and drinking wine. I stood near Marcus's casket, not ready to leave him yet. Most of the guests ignored me. I was just the mother-in-law after all, not important. And then I heard it. Priscilla was standing about 10 feet away talking to her friend Meredith. They were speaking quietly, but I have always had good hearing. The room was loud, but somehow their voices cut through the noise. "I am not taking care of that old woman," Priscilla said. "She can figure out her own life. I have dealt with her long enough." Meredith leaned closer. "What about the will? Do you know what Marcus left?" Priscilla smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. "Everything is mine. Marcus loved me. Whatever he had, it belongs to me now. That woman gets nothing." My knees nearly buckled. I gripped the edge of the casket to keep myself from falling. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an iron fist. They kept talking, but I could not hear anymore. The blood was rushing in my ears. I looked down at my son's face, peaceful and still, and I whispered to him, "I heard her, Marcus. I understand now." I did not confront Priscilla that day. I did not have the strength. But something hardened inside me in that moment, a determination that had not been there before. My son had warned me about her. He had changed his will to protect me, and she had no idea. 3 days after the funeral, Priscilla called me. "Bernadette," she said, her voice clipped and businesslike, "I need you to bring me Harold's watch, the one Marcus was keeping." My grip tightened on the phone. That watch had belonged to my husband. It was a simple silver timepiece, nothing expensive, but Harold had worn it every day of our marriage. When he died, Marcus had asked to keep it. He wore it sometimes on special occasions to feel close to his father. "That watch is a family heirloom," I said carefully. "It has sentimental value. I would like to keep it." Priscilla's voice hardened. "Everything that belonged to Marcus belongs to me now, legally. I want that watch." "It belonged to my husband," I repeated. "Marcus was keeping it as a remembrance of his father. It is not valuable in terms of money. I do not care," she snapped. "It was in Marcus's possession, so it is mine. Bring it to me." "No," I said quietly but firmly. "I will not." She made a sound of frustration. "You will regret this, Bernadette. I am his legal widow. I can make your life very difficult." And then she hung up. The next day, I saw it. Gloria came over with her tablet and showed me something on social media. Priscilla had posted a long message about how difficult her grief was and how some family members were not being supportive during this terrible time. She did not name me directly, but the implication was clear. The comments underneath were full of sympathy for Priscilla. Her friends called me selfish, ungrateful, difficult. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew what she had said at the funeral. None of them knew how she had treated me for years. I looked at the screen for a long moment, then handed the tablet back to Gloria. "Let her post what she wants," I said. "The truth will come out eventually." Gloria looked at me with concern. "Are you sure you do not want to respond? Set the record straight." I shook my head. "That is not how I operate. Besides, she will find out soon enough that things are not what she thinks they are." 1 week after the funeral, I received a phone call from a lawyer named Thomas Whitfield. He introduced himself as the attorney who had handled Marcus's legal affairs. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, "I need to schedule a meeting with you to discuss your son's estate. There are some matters that I believe you will want to be aware of." My heart beat faster. "Does Priscilla know about this meeting?" "She will be notified separately," he replied. "Under the terms of the will, you are the primary beneficiary of certain assets. I thought it was appropriate to inform you first. I drove to his office the next day. It was a modest building in downtown Philadelphia, nothing fancy." Mr. Whitfield was a gray-haired man in his 60s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. He shook my hand and offered me a seat. "Mrs. Thompson," he began, "your son came to see me about 3 weeks before his passing. He made significant changes to his will at that time." He slid a folder across the desk to me. "The original will left the majority of his assets to his wife, which is standard," he explained. However, Marcus specifically revised it to redirect a substantial portion of his estate to you. I opened the folder and looked at the documents inside. The legal language was complicated, but Mr. Whitfield walked me through it. Marcus had left me 70% of his financial assets. This included his savings accounts, his stock portfolio, and his retirement funds. It also included a life insurance policy worth $500,000 that he had purchased just 2 months before his death. I was named as the sole beneficiary of that policy. Priscilla would receive 30% of the financial assets, plus her share of the house, which they owned jointly. According to Mr. Whitfield, this was more than fair under the law. I stared at the numbers on the page, but they did not mean anything to me. All I could think about was my son sitting in this very office making these decisions because he wanted to protect me. Tears began to fall down my cheeks. He knew I whispered. He knew she would abandon me. Mr. Whitfield nodded gently. Marcus spoke to me at length about his reasons for these changes. He wanted to ensure that you were provided for. He was concerned that his wife might not honor any informal arrangements after his passing. I wiped my eyes. Thank you for telling me. When will Priscilla be informed? She has an appointment tomorrow morning, he said. I suspect she will not take the news well. I let out a small, humorless laugh. No, she will not. As I drove home that evening, I felt something I had not felt since Marcus died. Not happiness exactly, but something close to peace. My son had thought of me. Even in the midst of his own troubled marriage, he had made sure I would be okay, and Priscilla had no idea what was coming. The next afternoon, my doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen making myself a cup of tea. Gloria had just left after bringing me some groceries. The house was quiet. When the doorbell rang, I assumed it was Gloria coming back because she had forgotten something. But when I opened the door, Priscilla was standing on my porch. Her face was red. Her eyes were wild. Her hands were balled into fists at her sides. She was shaking with rage. "You," she said, her voice trembling. "You did this." I stood in the doorway, calm and still. "Would you like to come inside so we can talk?" She pushed past me into the living room. I closed the door and followed her. The lawyer told me she said spinning around to face me. He told me about the will. Marcus changed everything 2 weeks before he died. He gave most of his money to you. I nodded. Yes, he did. You manipulated him. Priscilla's voice rose to nearly a scream. You poisoned him against me. You made him do this. I shook my head slowly. I did not make Marcus do anything. He made his own decision. That is a lie. She pointed her finger at me, jabbing it in my direction. You have been trying to turn him against me since the day we met. You never liked me. You never wanted him to be happy. I felt a strange calmness settle over me. For years, I had absorbed Priscilla's slights and insults. I had swallowed my pain to keep the peace. I had stayed silent because I thought it was the right thing to do. But Marcus was gone now. There was no reason to stay silent anymore. Priscilla, I said quietly, I know what you said at the funeral. She stopped mid-sentence, her mouth still open. I was standing near the casket. I continued. I heard you talking to your friend. You said you were not going to take care of me. You called me that old woman. You said everything belonged to you now. Her face went pale. I was just... You said Marcus loved you and whatever he had was yours, I continued. You were so confident, so certain that you had won. Priscilla's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I kept my voice steady. Marcus knew exactly who you were. He came to see me 2 weeks before he died. He sat on my porch and cried Priscilla. He cried and told me how unhappy he was. He told me about the things you said to him, about how you called me a burden, about how you threw away the gifts I gave you, about how you told him to put me in a nursing home and forget about me. That is not fair, she said, her voice suddenly high and defensive. I was frustrated. I did not mean... Marcus heard you, I said. He heard every word, and he made his choice. Priscilla's face twisted. He was confused. He was under stress. He did not know what he was doing. I shook my head. My son was one of the smartest people I have ever known. He knew exactly what he was doing. He went to a lawyer. He signed legal documents. He had 2 witnesses. Everything is proper and official. There is nothing you can do to change it. I will sue, she said. I will fight this in court. I will prove that you manipulated him. You can try, I replied calmly, but you will lose. The will is valid. And honestly, Priscilla, you should be grateful. Marcus could have left you nothing. Instead, he gave you 30% and your share of the house. That is more than generous considering how you treated him. She stared at me, her chest heaving with anger. How I treated him. Are you serious? I was a good wife. Were you? I asked. Because the man who sat on my porch 2 weeks ago did not seem to think so. He told me he was miserable. He told me he wondered every day if he had made the right choice by marrying you. He told me he felt trapped. Priscilla's face crumbled. For just a moment, I saw something like genuine emotion flicker across her features. Then it was gone, replaced by hard anger. You do not know anything about our marriage, she said. Maybe not, I agreed. But I know what Marcus told me, and I know what I heard you say at his funeral. You showed me exactly who you are, Priscilla, and now Marcus's will has shown you exactly what you meant to him. She stood there breathing heavily, her fists still clenched. I could see her struggling to find words, to find some way to attack me to regain the upper hand, but there was nothing she could say. I walked to the front door and opened it. You can leave now, I said, and please do not come back. You are not welcome in this house. For a long moment she did not move. Then slowly she walked toward the door. As she passed me, she stopped. This is not over, she whispered. I looked her directly in the eyes. Yes, it is. She walked out. I closed the door behind her and stood there, my hand on the knob, my heart pounding in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt free. I had not shouted. I had not lost my temper. I had simply told the truth, calmly and clearly, and let the truth do its work. Marcus had given me this gift, the ability to stand up for myself without apology. Even in death, he had found a way to protect me. I walked back to the kitchen and finished making my tea. My hands were trembling slightly, but my heart was strangely peaceful. I sat down at the table, wrapped my fingers around the warm cup, and whispered a thank you to my son. The weeks that followed were difficult. Grief does not disappear overnight. It does not soften just because you have won some kind of victory. Marcus was still gone. Every morning I woke up and had to remember all over again that I would never see his smile, never hear his voice, never feel his arms around me. The pain was constant, like a wound that refused to heal. For the first month, I barely left the house. Gloria came by every day bringing food and company. She never pushed me to talk. She just sat with me watching television or doing crossword puzzles, letting me know I was not alone. The money from the will sat untouched in my bank account. I could not bring myself to spend it. Every dollar felt like it had been purchased with my son's life. I knew that was irrational. I knew Marcus had wanted me to use it to be comfortable, to not have to worry. But every time I looked at the numbers, all I could see was his face. Priscilla tried to contest the will just as she had threatened. She hired a lawyer and filed papers claiming that Marcus had been unduly influenced by me, that he had not been in his right mind when he made the changes, that I had taken advantage of his emotional state. Mr. Whitfield handled everything. He had documentation showing that Marcus had consulted with a therapist before making his decision, confirming that he was of sound mind. He had testimony from the witnesses who had been present when Marcus signed the new will. He had records of Marcus's appointments at the law office showing that he had come multiple times over the course of 2 weeks to discuss his options and make sure everything was correct. The case was dismissed within 3 months. The judge ruled that the will was valid and that there was no evidence of manipulation or undue influence. Priscilla received her 30% and her share of the house. I received the rest. After the ruling, I heard that Priscilla sold the house and moved to another state. I did not ask where. I did not care. She was part of a chapter of my life that I wanted to close forever. Slowly, I started to heal. It began with small things: getting dressed in the morning instead of staying in my robe all day, taking walks around the neighborhood, cooking simple meals instead of surviving on toast and tea. About 2 months after the funeral, I received a letter from the hospital where I used to work. They were starting a new volunteer program for elderly patients and wanted to know if I would be interested in participating. I almost threw the letter away. I did not feel ready to be around people, to be helpful, to be anything other than a grieving mother. But Gloria saw the letter on my kitchen counter and picked it up. "Bernie," she said, "this could be good for you. Getting out of the house, being around people, using those nursing skills you spent 35 years developing." I shook my head. I do not think I can. She sat down across from me and took my hand. "What would Marcus want you to do?" That question stopped me cold. I knew the answer immediately. Marcus would want me to live. He would want me to find purpose again. He would want me to be happy. I started volunteering the following week. At first, it was just a few hours on Tuesday afternoons. I would visit with elderly patients, read to them, help them with their meals, hold their hands when they were scared. The work was familiar and comforting. It reminded me of why I had become a nurse in the first place. The patients appreciated me. They told me I had a gentle voice, a calming presence. One woman, a 92-year-old named Edith, called me her angel. When she passed away peacefully 3 weeks later, her daughter found me in the hallway and hugged me, thanking me for making her mother's last days less lonely. That hug changed something in me. I realized that I still had value. I still had something to offer. My life was not over just because my son was gone. 6 months after Marcus's death, I made a decision about the money. I did not want it sitting in a bank account doing nothing. Marcus had worked hard for that money. He had wanted it to make a difference. So I contacted his old college and asked about setting up a scholarship fund. The Marcus Thompson Memorial Scholarship would be awarded each year to an engineering student from a low-income background. Someone who, like Marcus, had worked hard to build a better life for themselves. Someone who might not have the opportunity otherwise. The college was thrilled. They held a small ceremony to establish the fund, and I spoke briefly about my son, about his intelligence, his kindness, his determination, about how much he loved his work and how proud he was of everything he had accomplished. It was the first time I had talked about Marcus in public since his death. I cried through most of it, but afterward I felt lighter, like I had done something that mattered. Like Marcus's memory was being honored in a way that he would have appreciated. I also kept Harold's watch. It sits on my dresser now next to a photograph of Marcus and a small vase of yellow tulips that I replace every week. Sometimes late at night, I pick up the watch and hold it in my hands. I think about my husband and my son, the 2 men I loved most in this world, both gone now, and I feel their presence with me even though they are not here. Priscilla never contacted me again after the court case. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she remarried within a year to a wealthy businessman she met at a real estate conference. I hope she found whatever she was looking for. I hope she is happy, not because she deserves it, but because holding on to anger would only poison my own soul. Forgiveness, I learned, is not about the other person. It is about freeing yourself. Now, almost 2 years later, I am in a different place than I was on that terrible night when the phone rang and my world fell apart. The grief is still there. It will always be there. But it has softened into something I can carry rather than something that carries me. I volunteer at the hospital 3 days a week now. I have made new friends among the staff and the patients. Gloria and I take trips together, little weekend getaways to the shore or the mountains. I have started gardening again, growing tomatoes and zucchini in the backyard where Marcus used to play. And every Sunday evening at the time when Marcus used to call me, I pour myself a cup of tea and sit on the back porch. I talk to him out loud as if he can hear me. I tell him about my week. I tell him about the volunteers and the patients. I tell him about the scholarship recipients and how proud I am of them. I tell him I love him. I tell him I miss him. And I thank him for protecting me even when he was no longer here. The lesson I have learned from all of this is simple, but profound. The people who truly love you will never see you as a burden. They will never abandon you when you are vulnerable. They will find ways to protect you, to care for you, to make sure you are okay, no matter what obstacles stand in their way. Marcus loved me that way. And even though Priscilla tried to push me out, even though she treated me with contempt and cruelty, my son made sure she could not win. Life is not always fair. Sometimes the wrong people seem to prosper, while the good ones suffer. But I have learned that truth has a way of revealing itself. Eventually, the masks come off. Eventually, people show who they really are. And eventually, love wins. If you are watching this and feeling like someone in your life sees you as disposable, I want you to know that your worth is not determined by how others treat you. You are valuable. You matter. And somewhere out there, there are people who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. My son Marcus was one of those people for me, and I will carry his love with me for the rest of my days. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone underestimated you or treated you like you did not matter, only for the truth to come out later? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I believe that sharing our experiences helps us all heal. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. You never know who might be going through something similar and feeling alone. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you peace, I wish you strength, and I wish you the kind of love that protects you even in the darkest times. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.